Hey, shalom, shalom from your Dutch Uncle John, here to tell you what it is about the letter Tet. And we're still in Kyrgyzstan and loving it. All right, the letter Tet, it's the 9th letter of the Hebrew alphabet. It's the T sound. Its picture is a coiled snake in a basket. Okay, its Gematria value is 9. The letter Tet is spelled, interestingly, Tet Yud Tav. There's a Tav involved. If you spell Tet Yud Tet, this is also a word, and it means clay. You know, the thick, muddy clay. Tet has the honor of being the least used letter in the Torah, 1,802 tets in the Torah. The Greek equivalent is the letter theta. And keep that in mind, theta. There's a cursive version, and it looks just like this, you can see on the screen. And, you know, that we told you it's the letter T, but there are actually 3 different letters in Hebrew that make a T sound. There's the Tav, and there's the Tsadi, and the Tet. The Tsadi is more like a TZ or TS sound, as in Tsar. Okay, and the letter Tet and the letter Tav in English, we would pronounce that with a very hard T, where you put your tongue at the back of your teeth, Tet, Tav. But in Hebrew, it's a softer on both of those. So if you wanted to practice saying it, stick your tongue out, th, like in theta, theta, the Greek letter, okay? So Tel Aviv. Tel Aviv. Practice sticking your tongue out and put your teeth on top of it when you pronounce it. Tel Aviv, by the way, begins with a Tav. Tiberias is the big city up in the north on the Sea of Galilee, the Kinneret, and that begins with a Tet. Okay, so the 2 letters Chet and Tet are next to each other, all right? And we've talked about the Chet, that it's actually made up of a Vav and a Zayin, right? The Vav is a man, the Zayin is an upright man with a crown representing Yeshua, and they are connected by the chuppah, okay, or covered by the chuppah, yoked together, all right? The Tet is being a coiled snake. That kind of reminds you of Satan, Hasatan, Satan, or something bad. And he would take these 2 letters and flip them upside down, and this is how he would get the letter Tet. All right? So they kind of come together, an upside down Vav and Zayin. Got it? The Het, being a Vav and a Zayin, is a 6 and a 7, which adds up to 13. And the Tet, being a Vav and a Zayin, also adds up to 13. And these 2 letters together form 26, pointing to Yud He, Vav He. And you can see even the modern Babylonian script here of the letter Tet, it looks like a snake. You've got the head, and then the tail curls up around, okay? So, there we got that out of the way. Let's move on to the first time a Tet is mentioned in the Bible. And it's early on, it's in Genesis 1:4. And God saw that the light was good, and he separated the light from the darkness. The word for good is Tov, Tet Vav Bet. Tov, Tov. All right? And you'll hear that with Jews speaking, they'll say, Erev Tov, good evening, or Laila Tov, good night, Boker Tov, good morning. Okay? And it's interesting that if Tov represents a coiled snake and maybe something bad, that its first usage, the first word that begins with a tet, is the word good. So is tet good or is tet bad? This is what we want to discuss, among other things. This word good, by the way, is used 7 times in Creator Week. On day 1, he creates light. He doesn't create light, excuse me. He lets light be. Be light, he said. And he saw that the light was tov, good. On day 2, he separates the water with a firmament, an air pocket. On day 3, he makes the land come up out of the water, and he sees that it's good. And then he covers the land with vegetation, and he sees that it's tov, good. And notice the order that's about to happen here. On day 4, he creates the greater light, lesser light, and the stars, things that produce light, which corresponds to day 1. And he saw that that was tov. On day 5, he fills day 2's air and water with fish and birds, and he sees that it's good. On day 6, he covers day 3's land with animals and man, and he sees that it's good, and then he looks at everything and sees that it's very good. So there is a nice correlation between day 1 and 4, day 2 and 5, day 3 and 6. But I do want you to point out one thing here. Notice that day 2, he does not say day 2 is good. Well, that's interesting. And if you want to know why, or at least my idea why, we cover that in, we have a series of videos on Creator Week. I think it's the first day is its own video. Day 2, 3, and 4 might be a second video, and then day 5, 6, and 7 is a third video. You can find those on YouTube and have a look. And we explain why day 2 was not good. So 7 times in Creator Week, he says we saw something was good. I also want to point out on day 3, look what happens. Genesis 1, verse 9. And God said, let the waters below the heavens be gathered into one place, and let the land, dry land appear, and it was so. God called the dry land earth, and the gathering of the waters he called seas, and God saw that it was good. There's the second time God saw it was good. Verse 11, and God said, let the earth sprout vegetation, plants yielding seed, and fruit trees on the earth, bearing fruit after their kind, with seed in them. And it was so. And the earth brought forth vegetation, plants yielding seed after their kind, and trees bearing fruit with seed in them after their kind. And God saw that it was good. And there was Erev, and there was Boker, day 3. So day 3 got 2, and God saw it was good. Interesting. The Jews have a name for this, Pa'amayim Kitov, twice that is good. So there's something special about day 3 that God announced twice it was good. Well, we know from reading ahead in the New Testament, Yeshua rose on the 3rd day, so that obviously would be the number 1 tie-in. And since the 3rd day is considered very, very good, twice good, many Jews marry on Tuesdays. Okay, they want that extra blessing. And if you've ever been to a Jewish wedding, you would probably hear this, Mazel Tov. Mazel Tov is the Tov, good, and Mazel is, it's not luck, it's not really fortune. Fortune might be a better one word to put in there, okay? But it's a blessing for good outcome. How about that? So you see Tov. And just as a little side note, we've told you that in Creator Week, God saw that it was good 7 times. And now Creator Week is finished. What is the next thing that God saw? Well, Genesis 1:31 is the 7th one, and God saw all that he made, and behold, it was very good. There's the 7th. The 8th thing that God saw is found in Genesis 6:5. Then Yahweh saw the wickedness of man was great on the earth, and that every intent of his thoughts of his heart was only evil continually. It's interesting that it starts out with a bang and everything is good, 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 very good. And then 5 chapters later, the whole thing goes to hell in a handbasket, and it's all he sees is the wickedness of man, which then leads chapter 6, 7, 8 to the flood, where he wipes everything out except for the 8 on the ark. Okay? The letter Tet is not the letter Mem. They kind of look a little bit similar. They have the big protrusion sticking out, okay? And Tet, we know, is value is 9. Mem's value is 40. And Mem, we had said, kind of signifies pregnancy, okay? You can kind of see a pregnant woman. And you know what? So can you in the letter Tet. It looks like a maybe upside down or inverted pregnant belly, okay? And they both have a little birth canal where it would come out, the baby would come out. And Mem has a lot of you know, the value 40 has a lot of tie-ins with pregnancy. You know, we've talked about that in the Mem video. The word milk, the word embryo, all of these words in Gematria add up to 40. So Mem is definitely connected with pregnancy. And Tet, it has the shape, it's kind of inverted. Maybe they both have a little birth canal. And so there might be some relationship between the Tet and the Mem and pregnancy. The thing with the Tet, because it represents snake, which is bad, but it also represents Tov, which is good. You've kind of got both in one letter, good and bad. And you're just not sure inside that womb what's coming out. Is it going to be something good? Is it going to be bad? Okay? And it's interesting that Tet being 9, Tet would be 9 months is a pregnancy, right? And Mem is 40, which represents 40 weeks, which is also pregnancy, okay? So they both kind of relate to pregnancy. But again, is it what's inside there, is it good or bad? We're not quite sure, okay? Now, we said that you take the Zayin and the Vav and you flip them upside down, which I'm not real keen on flipping God's letters upside down to form a letter. You know, there might be another way to form the Tet involving the Vav and the Zayin. Okay, the Zayin, remember, is an upright man that's crowned, represents Yeshua. The Vav is also an upright man, just a normal everyday man. Man's number is 6. And if the Vav humbles himself before the letter Zayin, now that kind of looks like the Tet. All right? And so now instead of a crossed or a coiled snake, you have 2 crossed lines which represent a covenant. And the covenant, well, that's a good thing, right? And if you put the circle around it, it makes an eternal covenant. So there's much nicer description of the Tet if you do it this way, okay? But still, the Tet can go either way. It can represent bad, it can represent good. Look in Genesis 3:15. Remember, this is the proto-evangelium, the first gospel, okay? And it says, this is when they've sinned in the garden and God's dishing out the curses, and to the snake, he says, I will put enmity between you and the woman, and between your seed and her seed. He shall bruise you on the head, and you shall bruise him on the heel. The snake seed would be the tet on the left, the coiled snake. The woman's seed is the eternal covenant, the cross, eternal. Beautiful picture of how tet can go either way. Okay? Very nice. And by the way, in Genesis 3:15, you would write 3:15 in Hebrew. The 3 is Gimel, and the 15 would be a Yod, 10, plus a Hey, 5. But the Jews don't write Gimel, Yod, Hey, because Yod, Hey is Yah, which is half of Yod, Hey, Vav, Hey, half of God's name. And there's a commandment that says, don't take the name of the Lord thy God in vain. So they don't want to write Yod, Hey. Instead, they would write Gimel, 3, Tet, Vav. Tet is 9, Vav is 6, 9 and 6, 15. Very nice. And you'll see that all through the Tanakh. They never write Yod, Hey for 15. Okay? All right, so now the curses are dished out, and we move to Genesis 4, starting in verse 3. This is a story of Cain and Abel, okay, verse 3. So it came about in the course of time that Cain brought an offering to the Lord of the fruit of the ground. Abel, on his part, also brought of the firstlings of his flock and of their fat portions. And Yahweh had regard for Abel and for his offering. But for Cain and for his offering he had no regard. So Cain became very angry, and his countenance fell. Then Yahweh said to Cain, why are you angry? And why has your countenance fallen? If you do well, will not your countenance be lifted up? And if you do not do well, sin is crouching at the door, and its desire is for you, but you must master it. That verse 7 there, wow. Well, you've got the word tov in there twice. And you also have another tet word. It's the word chata, which is the word for sin. And that sin is crouching at the door, and its desire is for you. But you must master it. Isn't that the truth, right? Sin is always we're always being tempted. Satan works 24/7 to tempt us. And we must master overcoming that temptation. Okay? And it's interesting, the chata is a chet and a tet with an aleph on the end. Okay? Sin, chata. We've told you in previous video that the chet and the tet, they do not appear, those two letters do not appear in any of the names of the 12 sons of Jacob / Israel. Okay. Now, you know, in the first 3 verses of the Bible, we're introduced to the complex unity of God. In verse 1, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. There's God, Elohim, the Father, first. In verse 2, it says, and the earth was formless and void, and darkness was over the deep, and the Ruach Elohim, the Spirit of God, was hovering over the waters. So now we're introduced to the Father in verse 1, the Spirit in verse 2. Then you come to verse 3, and God said, be light, and light be. Vayomer Elohim, Yehi Or, Vayi Or. Light. This is not light from the sun, moon, and stars. You understand? Sun, moon, and stars have not even been created yet. They're going to be created till day 4. This light is... This is what, you know, scientists are studying light, and they don't understand light. I mean, it's a very complex thing, as evidenced here. This is not light in terms of turning on the light or the sun, moon, and stars. This is Yahshua. And it doesn't say God created the light. He just allowed the light to be, to go forth. Okay? Now, then in verse 4 of Genesis 1, and God saw that the light was tov, and he separated the light, or, from the darkness. All right? So, we know the light, the or, is Yeshua, Jesus, and the light is good, according to verse 4. Verse 12 of John 8 in the Brit Hadashah. Then Jesus again spoke to them, saying, I am the light of the world. He who follows me will not walk in the darkness, but will have the light of life. Yeshua himself claims to be this light. Okay? And if Yeshua is the light, and the light is good, then Yeshua is good. That's logical if-then statement. And you know what? If Yeshua is good, this reminds me of Deuteronomy 18:18. Remember, we did a whole 7 or 8 hours on Moses and the parallels between Yeshua and Moses. Because of this verse in Deuteronomy, it says, this is God telling Moses, I will raise up a prophet from among their countrymen like you, Moses, and I will put my words in his mouth, and he shall speak to them all that I command him. You know, the Jews are looking for their Messiah, but how do they know when he will arrive? How do you know which one, who's the Messiah? Well, he's telling them right here. He's the one. Tell them, Moses, that the Messiah is going to be the prophet he's going to be Jewish from among their countrymen, and he's going to be most like you, Moses. So if you study Moses and you study him every little detail, and then look for a prophet in the future who's got all the same qualities and traits, that will be the Messiah. And as I said, we've done 7 hours of a Moses video comparing Yeshua and Moses. The chances of anybody else being the Messiah is 0. Okay? So, if Yeshua is good, then Moses should be good. Look at Exodus chapter 2, verses 1 starting. Now a man of the house of Levi married a daughter of Levi, and she conceived and gave birth to a son. When she saw that he was tov, she hid him for 3 months. This is the birth of Moses, and it's declared here that Moses is tov. Should not be a surprise. If Yeshua is tov, then Moses is tov, and vice versa. Speaking of Moses, let's jump ahead. Exodus 4. Okay, Moses, remember, he's born. He's hidden in the river. Pharaoh's daughter finds him. He's raised the prince of Egypt. And at some point, when he grows up, he realizes, this is about age 40, he sees an Egyptian beating a Hebrew slave. So he kills the Egyptian, and he's out of town. He has to flee, right? And now he goes off to the wilderness, and he's there for 40 years. And after 40 years, he's now 80 years old, and he sees the bush burning up on the mountain. And he goes up to investigate, and it's God in a bush, burning, but the bush is not consumed. And he instructs Moses, I want you to go back and tell Pharaoh, let my people go. And in Exodus 4, he's asking God, then Moses said, what if they will not believe me or listen to what I say? For they may say, the Lord has not appeared to you. Then Yahweh said to him, what is that in your hand? And he said, a staff. Then he said, throw it on the ground. So he threw it on the ground, and it became a serpent, and Moses fled from it. But Yahweh said to Moshe, stretch out your hand and grasp it by the tail. So he stretched out his hand and caught it, and it became a staff in his hand. The Lord said to him, what is that in your hand? And he said, a staff. I'm reading verse 2 again. Here it is in the Hebrew. Look at it close. What is that? Okay, the word what, we've covered a million times, is ma. The word for that is zeh. If you put those two words together, you get mazeh, which is kind of a contraction of what is that, right? You see the ma and you see the zeh, it's all in one word. And the answer he gave is a staff, which is in Hebrew mateh. And mateh is mem tet he. The mem he is what? The answer to what is right in the middle, a tet. The tet is the coiled snake, right? And the answer is a staff, but it's the staff he threw down and it became a snake. This is a word play. God has a million of them in the Bible, but this is a kind of a cool word play. You know, what is that in your hand? And the answer is a staff. And in the word staff is the snake, which the staff becomes the snake. You know what this shows? Back in Genesis 4:7, remember, it said sin is crouching at the door and its desire is for you, but you must master it. This is a picture of Moses mastering the serpent. He's got control of it. He throws it down, it becomes a snake. He picks it up, it becomes a staff. He's not afraid of it. He'll grab it by the tail and it becomes a staff. You see, Moses is mastering over Satan, over the sin crouching at the door. That's the picture I see, anyway. All right. Now, is Moses 100% doing this all the time? Well, it's interesting. You go to Numbers, Bamidbar, chapter 20, starting in verse 7. And this is when they're in the wilderness and they're thirsty and they need water. And this is the second time this happened. It happened 30-some years earlier. Okay, starting in verse 7. And Yahweh said to Moses, take the staff, the metah, and assemble the congregation. You and your brother Aaron are to speak to the rock while they watch, and it will pour out its water. You will bring out water from the rock and provide drink for the congregation and their livestock. So Moshe took the staff from the Lord's presence, just as he had been commanded. Then Moshe and Aaron gathered the assembly in front of the rock, and Moshe said to them, listen now, you rebels, must we bring you water out of this rock? Verse 11, then Moses lifted up his hand and struck the rock with his staff twice. And water came forth abundantly, and the congregation and their beasts drank. Wow, a lot happened in that story right there. First of all, the first time that they needed water in the wilderness, God told him to strike the rock. And Moses took his staff and he struck the rock and water came out. Now it's 30 or 40 years later, and God tells Moses, I want you to speak to the rock. And this time Moses took the staff, the metah, and he struck the rock twice. And water came out, and the congregation and the beasts drank. You know, God was setting up a picture here, because this rock in the wilderness is a picture of the Messiah, Yeshua. And the first time Yeshua comes, he will be struck. And Jesus came the first time, and he was struck, and he was beaten, and he was crucified. And they put a sword in his side, and water came forth, blood and water. So the first time the Messiah comes, he will be struck. But when the Messiah comes back the second time, you will not strike the King of Kings and Lord of Lords, right? You will speak to him. And Moses messed up this picture that God was setting up by striking the rock twice. And he struck it with this metah, which has that tet inside. So Moses didn't 100% be master over this sin crouching at the door. Moses was a little bit upset with the people. We know that. He said, listen now, you rebels. Okay? So he's not happy with the people, and he let his anger at the people get the better of him, where he ended up disobeying God. And this is the reason Moses was not allowed to go to the promised land, because of this infraction. Okay? By the way, notice he struck the rock twice. I could see if he would have said, okay, you rebels, do I have to pull water out of this rock? And he took his stick and he hit the rock. And he said, oh, I'm sorry, God, I didn't mean to strike that. Take that back. But when he struck it twice, it's intentional. And that's where he did not master over the sin crouching at the door. There is another word for a staff or a rod. You'll see it in Psalm 23, verse 4. Psalm 23, right? This is the Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. In verse 4, it says, yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. And here it's the word shavat. It's a shin, bet, tet. And so here you have that coiled snake, but it's also look at it, the good side of it, it's the tov. And notice it follows a bet. Bet is bar. Bet is ben. Bet represents Yeshua. This is Yeshua. Anything that's going to follow that, that's nice. And notice shavat or shavat is very similar to Shabbat, right? It's just the tet at the end becomes a tav for Shabbat. So there's something associated with this shavat, a rod, comforting and bringing peace. Okay, now, so again, we got the coiled snake, bad. We've got tov, which is good. And you know what? God says in Romans 8:28, all things work together for good for those who love him and are called according to his purpose. So it doesn't matter what kind of bad this coiled snake's going to throw at us or the world or try to throw at God. God's going to turn it and it will come out good. That's a very miraculous thing that God is able to do. To take just the worst of the worst and turn it around and it becomes good. You know, there's lots of examples of this in the Bible. Here's one, again in Numbers 24, Bamidbar 24, starting in verse 5. This is when the Jews are entering the promised land, and there was a king there named Balak. And Balak is worried because these big hordes of Hebrews are coming into the promised land, and they might unseat him or have battle with him, and he can't fight against them. So he hires a guy named Balaam to curse the Jews. And starting in verse 5, behold, a people has come out of Egypt, said Balak. They cover the face of the land and have settled next to me. So please come now and put a curse on this people, because they are too mighty for me. Perhaps I may be able to defeat them and drive them out of the land. For I know that those you bless are blessed, and those you curse are cursed. Okay, so Balaam, remember, he was this prophet or man of God who, earlier, about 2 chapters earlier, remember he was riding on the donkey, and the donkey was, they were moving along, and the angel of the Lord appeared in front of the donkey where the donkey couldn't pass. So the donkey turned to the side, and Balaam starts beating the donkey, right? And then a second time he does it, and a third time he does it. And finally, Balaam's ass gave Balaam sass and said, why do you keep hitting me? You know? And the angel of the Lord opened Balaam's eyes where he saw the reason the donkey was doing this. Okay? And the angel of the Lord told Balaam, you will only be able to bless Israel. So now Balaam, he's been paid to go and curse Israel, and he goes up on the mountain in Numbers 24:5, overlooking the Jewish camps, and he's about to curse them, and he opens his mouth, and it says, how goodly are your tents, O Jacob, and your tabernacles, O Israel. See, it started out as a curse, but he couldn't curse. It turned it into a blessing. That, by the way, the first two words here, ma tovu, how goodly are your tents, O Jacob, and your tabernacles, O Israel. This is an actual prayer that the Jews recite, and they call it the ma tovu, the how goodly prayer, right? And isn't it true? Ma tovu, Israel. Ma tovu, Jacob. L'chaim. Today, we have Kyrgyzstan, Russian cherry juice in our mug. Delicious. Okay. Let's jump ahead. Ishayahu, Isaiah chapter 5, verse 20. Woe to those who call evil good and good evil, who put darkness for light and light for darkness, who put bitter for sweet and sweet for bitter. I wanted to show you this because A, it's got tov in it a couple times, but also, if you've been watching the videos, you should be able to read some of this. And I always find it fun with my limited Hebrew, and you probably the same. Oh yeah, I recognize that word. I see that. Oh yeah. So I just thought we'd go through this. This is just a little extra we're throwing in here. You might have a smile on this. But look at the first line. Woe to those who call evil good and good evil. Well, the word evil we've covered before. It's, remember in the word Pharaoh, is Pei, Resh, Ayin, Hey. The first and last letters, Pei, Hey, spell Pei, mouth. And the two middle letters, Resh, Ayin, spell Ra, which happens to have been one of the Egyptian gods. But Ra is the Hebrew word for evil. So Pharaoh is the mouth of evil. So now we look at that first line in Isaiah 5:20, and you can see Lara, Tov, Valatov, Ra. Woe to those who call for evil good and for good evil. I see those words. I can figure it out. Pretty cool. Look at the next line. It says, who put darkness for light and light for darkness. Well, we can go back to Genesis 1:4 and learn these words. And Elohim saw that the or was Tov. And Elohim separated the or from the Choshek. Choshek is darkness. Or is light. There it is. Choshek la'or, va'or lahoshek. Nice. Choshek. It's the chet. And this Choshek, this darkness, this is the same darkness that God sent as one of the plagues in Egypt. Total blackness. The third line, who put bitter for sweet and sweet for bitter. Well, we've seen the word bitter before. Remember whenever, in the Ruth story, when Naomi came back from Moab, back to Bethlehem, and they said, is this Naomi? And she said, don't call me Naomi, call me Mara. Call me bitter. She had lost her husband, she lost her 2 sons, and one daughter-in-law, and life was not going well for her. Mar is bitter. Okay? Tamar has mar in it. Miriam has mar in it. So you should recognize mar, bitter, and the word for sweetness is mathok. And here it is. Mar lamathok, vamathok lamar. Nice. We're reading some Hebrew. I love it. I love it. Okay. We're talking about how God can take something bad and turn it into something good. Okay. You know, this is a very modern example. You know, I think one of the absolute worst things ever is the Holocaust. I mean, how horrible was this? But you know what good came out of the Holocaust? If anything? Yeah, this did. Israel was reborn, and the Jews got their nation. Amen and amen! Woo! Love it. And you know something that's even worse than the Holocaust is found in Brit Hadashah, John 19:16. And it says, then he delivered him to them to be crucified. Then they took Yeshua and led him away. They crucified God incarnate, the Word of God incarnate on earth. He came to show us how to live, and man is so evil that they rejected him and crucified him. Who did? The Jews did, and the Gentiles did. It was the Romans who drove the nails. It was the Jews who pushed for it. Both sides are guilty. And you know why? Both sides had to be guilty. Both sides had blood on their hands because he died for both groups, Jew and Gentile. Everybody is a sinner. So that is probably the that is the worst, absolute worst crime of humanity, to kill God when he shows up to help you. And even God can take that bad and flip it to good. We know the wages of sin is death, but the gift of God is eternal life. How nice is that? Okay, let's go on with some more Tov talk, or Tet talk. Proverbs 12, verse 19, it says, the lip of truth shall be established forever, but a lying tongue is but for a moment. The word for truth is amet. We've covered it and covered it. An aleph, mem, tav. If you want to know the truth, look at amet. It's the first letter, aleph. It's the middle letter, mem. It's the last letter, tav. Look at the entire picture to know the truth. The beginning, the middle, the end. Every letter of truth, emet, stands on two legs. Got it? If you add up the Gematria values, aleph is 1, mem is 40, tav is 400, it adds up to 441. Add up the digits of 441, and you get 4 plus 4 plus 1 equals 9, truth. Well, 9, that's the Gematria of Tet. And I want you to realize that Tet, although it's this coiled snake, but it also means good, right? 9 always represents truth. So here, Tet is playing the good number, right? The good value, the good definition. Tet, 9, truth. And God is truth. Look at the ordinate values of truth. The aleph is the first letter, the mem is the 13th letter, the tav is the 22nd letter. 1 plus 13 plus 22 is 36. 3 and 6 equals 9. Tet, truth. Everything about truth comes down to 9. If you take a digit and multiply it times 9, 9 times 2 is 18. 1 and 8 is 9. 9 times 3, 27. 2 and 7 is 9. 36. 3 times 3 and 6 is 9. 45. 4 and 5 is 9. 54. 5 and 4 is 9. You get the picture? 6 and 3. 7 and 2. 8 and 1. If you multiply anything times 9 and then add up the digits of the answer, it always boils down to 9. 9 is the number of truth, and you can multiply anything and it always comes back down to 9. Let's take a bigger number. 9 times 29. I just grabbed a number. 261. 2 and 6 is 8, plus 1 is 9. 9 times 345 is 3105. 3 and 1 and 0 and 5 is 9. 9 times 4,286. 3 plus 8 plus 5 plus 7 plus 4 equals 27. 2 and 7 is 9. You pick a big number. 9 times 2,534,578. You get 22,811,202. The digits add up to 18. 1 and 8 is 9. Why does this happen? Because the lip of truth shall be established forever, but a lying tongue is but for a moment. The lip of truth established forever. 9 is truth, and 9 is truth, and 9 is truth. And that's the truth. All right. Here's a cool word that begins with tet, is telah. It's the Hebrew word for a lamb. Well, that's rather appropriate biblical word, right? Another one is the talit. The talit is that prayer shawl that a Jew wears over his head, okay? And it usually has, it's white and usually has a blue or a black stripe on it. I think this actually, whenever we talk about the multicolored or the technicolor dream coat that Jacob gave to Joseph, you know, I don't think it was this multicolored. I think it was kind of a long sleeve talit-like garment. It had a stripe or two on it, and which would have been very rare to find out in the desert where they were living, right? So just by having the stripe on it made it significantly different than anything else anybody was wearing. And that showed the favoritism. But the Jews go under this, it's almost like a little tent, and they go over it, they put it over their head in the mornings and pray. And when they do this, they believe that if they pray under the talit, that they will have goodness, good day. It's related back to the Tov, good. All right. By the way, the first time I went to a Messianic synagogue, I'm going to just tell you this little story because it's really a nice, touching story. So I'm sitting at the end of the aisle. There's an empty seat next to me. Then there's an old man, and then there's his wife, and then there's nobody else in that row. And there was probably 500 people in the congregation. And it's coming to the end of the talk, the whole service. It's about 2.5, 3 hour service they had. And let me see if I remember this. They were going to sing a song, and they had the words up on big screen, okay? And it was written in Hebrew and in English. And I was very new to this whole thing, so, you know, and then they were going to say a prayer. So all the Jews knew the song in Hebrew and in English. I didn't. So their heads are bowed, and they're reciting or singing this song. And my head is bowed, but I got a peek because I don't know the words, and it's all new in Hebrew. So I'm kind of peeking, and then I put my head back down. And so they finish the song, and now they're going to do a prayer. And when the song ends, my head is down, eyes are closed, and all of a sudden I feel somebody touching my shoulder. Well, I know that there's nobody sitting next to me. Is it the guy behind me? Why is he touching me? Who's touching me? Why are you touching me? You know? And I don't know, what do I do? So everybody's eyes are closed and heads are bowed, so I'm going to open my eyes and peek and find out why someone's touching me. This old man who was sitting a chair away, he had taken his talit and he covered his wife with it, pulled her in close to him, and he kind of scooted over halfway past the empty chair, and he put that talit over my shoulder. Beautiful. Whew, okay. God bless the Jews. Okay, here's a word we've mentioned before, is Satan. Satan has a tet in his name. And it's spelled Shin Tet Nun. Every time I tell that story, and I've only told it a handful of times, but I always tear up. Anyway, Satan is Shin Tet Nun. Shin is destruction. Tet is a serpent coiled. And Nun is life. And this is a final Nun, a Nun Sophite, right? It's the little fish. The tail moves up, down, up, down, up, down. That's where you get the letter N. Okay, so life. Satan's name, if you look, just to go by the Paleo-Hebrew letters and their definitions, he is the serpent who destroys life. Wow, what appropriate letters to put in Satan's name. Let's put in the Gematria. Shin is 300. Tet is 9. Nun is 50. Satan, Hasatan's name adds up to 359. 359. Okay, what does that have to do with anything? Well, you know, in our calendar, Gregorian calendar, I think is the one we use, right? January has 31 days, February 28, and on and so forth. The 359th day of the year is December 25th, a day which we celebrate, not we, including me, a day in which the world celebrates the birth of Jesus. And they call it Christmas, a Christ Mass, okay? Although a lot of people have now taken the word Christ out and put an X there, Xmas. Okay. Now, if you've watched my video on this, what did I even call it? It's not the Spring Moedim. It's the Feast of Tabernacles. It's the birth of Jesus, I think, or the Jesus birthday. That's what it was. Look at that one. Because Yeshua was not born on December 25th. He wasn't even born in December. That is all a bunch of pagan nonsense, which I cover in the video on Revelation 2 and 3. It's all paganism, and then Catholicism took it and expanded it and made all these crazy traditions. And Yeshua was born in September on Sukkot, the Feast of Tabernacles, when the Word came to tabernacle amongst us. Okay? That's the 7th Moedim, Feast of Booths, Feast of Tabernacles. That's when Yeshua was born. Not this crazy day that Satan has usurped, and we're all celebrating with snowmen and jingle bells and all this nonsense. And we got this crazy guy in a red suit, which has the same letters as Satan, and we're celebrating that and not celebrating the truth when the actual birth took place. Very, very sad. You know, we always picture Satan as red with horns and a tail, right? And so we got this other red guy. All right, let's jump ahead. Psalm 119. Remember, this is the psalm that has 176 verses, and every 8 verses begins with a different letter of the Hebrew alphabet. The first 8 all begin with the letter Aleph. The next 8 all begin with the letter Bet. The next 8 all begin with the letter Gimel. And if you jump down to verse 65 through 72, there it is in the English. And just notice in English, well, good, 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 better, good. It's just all through there. Every line begins with a tet. And the word good shows up all through there, the word tov. Okay, nice how he weaves that all in there. We've talked about the Sha'at Naget's letters. There are 7 Hebrew letters that have crowns on them, and the tet is one of those. Okay. And in John 8, verse 44, it says, "You are of your father, the devil, and you want to do the desires of your father. Whenever he speaks a lie, he speaks from his own nature, for he is a liar and the father of lies." So, Satan, the devil, is the coiled snake, and he's a liar. And you can remember the commandments by the letters. If it's the 9th commandment, 9 is, the Gematria 9 is a tet. Tet is a coiled snake. The coiled snake is a liar from the beginning. Commandment number 9, you shall not bear false witness against your neighbor. Don't lie. Okay, so I'm going to leave you with just one last reminder of this verse in Genesis 4:7. You know, the tet can be the coiled snake, bad, or it can be the eternal covenant. And it's up to you. And if you do not do well, sin is crouching at the door, and its desire is for you. But you must master it. Very nice. I hope and pray that you do. To God be the honor, to God be the glory, to God be the praise. Thank you for watching. God bless. See you soon. Bye-bye. Wait! We have a bonus! And this is a really cool bonus. As all of them are. No, most of them are. This is a good one. In Exodus, Shemot, chapter 20. This is the 10 Commandments. And it starts in verse 2, goes all the way down through verse 17. And here it is in the Hebrew. And you know, throughout this entire 10 Commandments, he uses every letter of the Hebrew alphabet except Tet. There is no letter Tet in the 10 Commandments of Exodus chapter 20. Well, that's interesting. Okay, now remember, this was given at Mount Sinai when they first come out of Egypt, 50 days after they were coming out of Egypt, right on Shavuot. Then they balk at the opportunity to enter the promised land, so God makes them wander in the wilderness for 38 years. And a lot of the original people who came out, they've now died and moved on, and you have this whole new generation, and they weren't there at Sinai to get the commandments. So in Deuteronomy, he's going to give the commandments again. And it's found in Deuteronomy chapter 5, Devarim chapter 5. Well, in this version of the 10 Commandments, it's a little bit different. It actually does have the letter Tet in it. Wow. Well, that's interesting. In fact, it's in there twice that I found. Okay. Now, back in the Exodus version, there are 172 words in Hebrew that he used to explain, give the 10 Commandments. In the Deuteronomy, and there's no Tet in the Exodus version. In the Deuteronomy version, there's 189 words, and there is a Tet. All right? So let's look at the two versions side by side. In the Deuteronomy version, the word that does contain the Tet is the word Yitov, that it may be good, or that it may be well with you. Okay? And here it is, and oh look, it's the word Yitov. There's the Tov, right? Tov, remember, was the word for good. So the Deuteronomy version has this word Tov in it. Nice. Tov is a Tet, Vav, Bet. Tet is 9, Vav is 6, Bet is 2. So the word Tov adds up to 17. And what's kind of interesting is, from the first giving of the commandments with 172 words, and then if you add 17 words, you get the Deuteronomy version, and that Deuteronomy version, it has the word Tov in it, and the Deuteronomy version is good. The first, you know, on the big picture, God gave the commandments, those tablets were smashed, pointing to the fact that the Jews would break these commandments, and that there's another set of commandments, a new covenant would have to come. And on the big picture, that new covenant is the Brit Hadashah. Jeremiah 31:31 says, I'm going to give you a new covenant, not like the one at Sinai which you broke. The new covenant that's coming is the one in Jesus, Yeshua's blood. So it's showing that the newer version, the newer commandment, the newer covenant would be Tov. And there's no better covenant than the one in Yeshua's blood. Thanks for watching. God bless. See you. Bye.